Athletes get the press and all of the big money, but it's the business minds behind the scenes that are often instrumental to their financial success. How can you help your team win off the field? Today we'll talk naming rights, corporate sponsorship, strategic planning, and taking your sports dreams all the way to China.
The business of sports. You're watching The Language of Business with Greg Stoller.
Professional athletes are fun to watch, and the best ones make millions. But who looks after the fine print of their contracts? Joe Rosen is the head of the baseball division of Orpheus Sports and represents professional ball players. Welcome to The Language of Business, Joe.
Hi, how are you, Greg?
So how did you find your first client?
I was a lawyer at a big firm in Boston, Goulston & Stores, and I made the decision that this is what I was going to do. I had developed the sports practice at Goulston for a number of years, wanted to do the player representation side, and approached the managing partner at Goulston about it, but it was really something that the fee structure didn't work in a big firm. So I went out on my own, and that was the big question. It was like, how am I going to find my first client? And I got a call from a buddy of mine who I went to law school with. This was about a month after I had started doing this. I said, well, how do you do it? Do you just go up and say hi and I'm Joe and I'd like to represent you and that type of thing?
Or do you offer to play catch with them?
Pretty much. They wouldn't want to play catch with me. So I did, and I talked to, and he said, yeah, that's really what you do. So the first professional player who I represented was a player named Ryan Shaver. The player's mother called my friend and said, hey, I'd like you to represent my son, just out of the blue. And my friend said, I can't really do this. He had been doing it for 10 years. This was a really young rookie ball player who had just signed out of junior college. And my friend called me and said, hey, I got a player for you if you want to represent him. And I said, absolutely, 100%. And I flew down to Arizona in July when it was about 140 degrees, and I signed him, and that was awesome.
What does it mean, though, for the benefit of our viewers to represent a player? That doesn't necessarily mean the player is going to make it, but you are, quote unquote, representing them, right? If
you're representing an amateur player, a high school player or a college player, that's what's called, advising that player. And there's limits on what you can do. The NCAA limits what you can do, but the NCAA specifically allows high school and college players to have legal advisors, and you can help them and give them information about their draft prospects and things like that. So that's sort of the advising stage. So you're representing a player, but there can't be a written contract, so it's a very different thing. Representing a professional player, there's a lot of things that come into it. Helping them negotiate contracts. In professional baseball, until you get to the major leagues, the contracts don't occur that often. You usually have one minor league contract, and hopefully you'll never have another minor league contract.
Sure, because they're going to make it to the big leagues, right?
Exactly. So there is obviously a lot of contract work, but there's other things that come into it. As their agent, I mean, that's what representing a player means. You're taking care of their equipment deals. If you can't get them an equipment deal, you're taking care of their equipment. You're purchasing their equipment for them. You're helping them find a trainer. You're helping them with, I don't do financial advice or tax, but I have relationships with people that I'll make introductions, or I'll help them make their selection of those people.
How many athletes do you feel comfortable representing?
I think my maximum for me personally would be between 30 and 35. I'm less than that right now. I like 25 to 30. That's always been the number that I feel comfortable with. You want a certain amount of guys in the big leagues, you want a certain amount of guys in the high levels of the minor leagues, and you want a certain number of draft guys and things like that.
Who have been some of your more notable players that you've represented?
Well, I represented Hideki Okachima when he was with the Red Sox for a number of years. I've worked with Brandon Moss. I've had 7 players in the big leagues in the 10 years that I've done this. So, those are probably the two bigger names that you've heard of. Eric Ferris, Ryan Reed is a client of mine. He's with the Mets now. He was with the Pirates in the big leagues last year. So I've had a number of guys up there. I've had first-round picks. I've had top 5-round picks just about every year, except my first draft. It's been good. And now the recruiting side, it comes to me a little more than I have to go to them.
How do you get paid? Because we think of professional athletes as making millions,
right,
but when you first come onto the scene, they just have big dreams.
Right. There's a few places you get paid. When a player is drafted, if you are representing that player and that player signs with you once they become a professional, you'll get a percentage of their signing bonus. A lot of times between when they draft and they sign until they get to the major leagues, that can be quite a long time. So you're working off that percentage of the signing bonus for sometimes forever. I mean, sometimes they never get to the big leagues, and sometimes it takes 5, 6, 7 years. And it's one percentage.
What would be an average signing bonus?
First rounders can make, $1 million and up. After that, it goes down significantly. But if you're a 5th round pick, for example, you'll make between $250,000 and $350,000 or $400,000. Sometimes if you're a high school player, more, depending on that. But I mean, think about that. You're taking a percentage, a very small percentage. Most agents charge 4 to 5%.
Right.
You're taking a percentage of their signing bonus, and that's the last thing that you are seeing until that player gets to the big leagues.
If they even make it to the big leagues.
If they get to the big leagues.
From the business side, what are the more difficult terms that you have had to negotiate in these contracts?
The money is the money. I mean, the market is going to set the money, whether it's a draft contract or a major league contract. The market is going to set the money. Obviously, as an agent, you're trying to get as much as possible for your client, but the market is really going to set that, especially in arbitration, right? I mean, you see some of these free agent contracts, players are getting paid maybe more than you think that they're worth, but that's the market. That's what it's setting. Arbitration, you're only negotiating with one team. The team doesn't have all the leverage, but it's set on market value, you know, based on players in similar situations in the past. You know, some of the other terms that come into play, especially for a player, a Japanese player, they're looking for other things, an interpreter, flights home, things like that. You have to be creative. You have to make sure, first and foremost, that the client is getting what he wants. And you think that money is the most important thing, but it isn't all the time.
Market forces notwithstanding, are the high salaries justified?
Absolutely, 100%. And I'll say this, once you get to the big leagues, the first 3 years, and this is generalization, your first 3 years, you're under the complete control of the team. They set your salaries. Your next 3 years, and they're Super 2s, right, if you're in the top percentage, but years 4, 5, and 6, you're in arbitration. And during arbitration, you have to sign with your team if they want you to, but they can't set the salary anymore. It's based on what similar players in similar circumstances have done. So only after 6 years are you a free agent? I mean, think about that. So if you get to the big leagues when you're 28 or 30 and you do well, you're not a free agent until you're 34 or you're 35.
Nobody's going to want you.
Right. You got to get as much as you can when you can, and this is the way the system is, so it works.
Thanks, Joe. Joe Rosen, the head of the baseball division of Orpheus Sports. Ever dream of getting paid to wear your favorite sports logo?
Coming up, a poor American kid moves from the housing projects to become a sports maven in China.